Godzilla in 1998, nearly 30 years later, is still easily amongst the worst and most hated Godzilla movies ever. It was the first ever American Godzilla movie, and for a while, it seemed like it could be the last one. But in 2014, something happened. We got a second American Godzilla movie, and not only is it beloved amongst fans, but it somehow managed to spawn an entire multi-billion-dollar interconnected franchise, the Monsterverse. But how? How did this happen? Why did one American CGI Godzilla interpretation open the door for Godzilla's new age, and the other one flop and die harder than Concorde? Well, let's get into that. Reason number 1. Adaptation. The most apparent and important reason that Godzilla 2014 worked and 1998 didn't is quite simply their adaptation of the titular kaiju. And I'm not only talking about Godzilla's design, but that is a big part of it, so let's talk about it. If I'm being honest, I like the Godzilla 1998 design. Honestly, I think it's pretty cool. It's very sleek, especially the animated one. That looks great. And it's overall a well-designed dinosaur, but that's the issue. Dinosaur. This is not Godzilla. It doesn't have an atomic breath, stand on both legs. It's more of an iguana than a dinosaur, really. It would fit in more with Jurassic Park than Godzilla, but we'll talk about the Jurassic Park stuff later. Of course, Godzilla designs change, and they should be varied, but this went so far in a different direction that you can't even consider it Godzilla. But why does this stuff matter? Who cares that Godzilla looks different? Well, we care. When you attach the name Godzilla to a project, it comes with expectations. Would you get mad at someone if a new Spider-Man movie came out and Peter Parker was a jock with a perfect life, living parents, and ice superpowers? No, because the adaptation strayed so far from the original, it can't even consider the same thing. Godzilla 2014, on the other hand, knew what it was doing. When they were making this design, Legendary looked to the past to what made a Godzilla design Godzilla. Obviously, they got the necessary stuff like being bipedal, a real atomic breath, the black scales, and 3 rows of dorsal plates. But they even worked with Toho, who not only were heavily involved in the design, but their stamp of approval was required to finalize the design. For all intents and purposes, 2014 Godzilla and Monsterverse Godzilla in general is a Toho Godzilla. But it's not just about the design, it's about what it means to be a Godzilla. Godzilla isn't just any old movie monster who mindlessly destroys things. No, he serves a purpose. Even the silliest and wackiest of Godzilla movies, there's always something there, some message that Godzilla represents, whether that be nuclear war, climate change, or protector of nature. 1998's Godzilla had nothing. He was just a dinosaur. He didn't even come from Japan, he was from France. You could make some vague connections to genetic engineering and the environment, but they're extremely subtle, to the point where they probably weren't even intentional. Gary Goji always had a theme in mind, one that's still present to this day. This Godzilla is nature's strongest weapon, a living embodiment of the power the natural world holds over mankind, and serves as its greatest protector. The theme added lots of thematic resonance of the film, something that has binding the entire Godzilla franchise together, except for, of course, Godzilla 1998. Reason number 2, the writing. Writing is one of the most important parts of a movie. If a movie is hated or loved, the number one reason is always the writing. The biggest problem with Godzilla 1998's writing is the overemphasis on humor, to the detriment of the rest of the film. Humor in a Godzilla movie isn't a bad thing, it can even be a great thing, but there is such a thing as too much humor, and Godzilla 1998 crossed that line. The entire film was one big joke. There are more scenes making fun of the main character's name than there are developing our characters. Some of the jokes aren't even half bad, but there are far too many and way out of place. Godzilla 1998 leaned far too much into being a fun summer blockbuster than a Godzilla movie. But it's not even a fun summer blockbuster. At least those movies like the Fast and Furious films or the Transformers have likable characters. These guys are so stupid and unlikable that every second they're on screen is just agonizing pain. They constantly make dumb decisions, and they're the most generic, bland, one-dimensional, cookie-cutter character archetypes you've ever seen. It tried way too hard to be a Jurassic Park ripoff than a Godzilla movie, but at that point, why call it Godzilla? The movie would have been better if it wasn't called Godzilla, but of course, the writing would still be bad. Half the time, the movie wants to be this fun, goofy, campy dinosaur movie, but the other half of the time, they want to be this deep, sad, and serious drama. You can have serious moments in a blockbuster, but you gotta earn them and use them well. This movie does not. In terms of good writing though, look no further than Godzilla 2014. Godzilla 2014 knew what it wanted and excelled at it. It wanted to be a more grounded Godzilla movie that took itself seriously. There were some jokes, but they didn't detract from the scene, that added by adding levity and characterization. But for the most part, they played it straight and it worked really well. But why did it work? Well, the main reasons were a great Godzilla, which we covered, an engaging storyline, and most importantly, the characters. These characters, while a bit generic and forgettable, were well written for what they are. Shout out especially to Bryan Cranston's character. You were taken from us far too soon. The characters made reasonable decisions, the dialogue was well written, and they acted and felt like actual people would in these types of situations. And they felt like actual people, not machines for you to dispense jokes. Reason number 3, directors. The last reason as to why Godzilla 1998 failed and in 2014 succeeded is semi-related to the first, but it's a bit different enough that I want to make a distinction. Godzilla 1998 was made for money. While I can't speak for the entire production team, we at least know that Roland Emmerich, the movie's director, didn't even care for Godzilla. Here's a quote from Wikizilla about Emmerich's directorial role. Emmerich immediately refused, and wondered why Sony would even think he would be interested in directing it. Emmerich stated that he never was a big Godzilla fan, and didn't see a way to make the film serious like TriStar wanted. So yeah, no other movie didn't feel anything like a Godzilla movie. The guy who made it doesn't even like Godzilla movies. Which isn't a bad thing. If it's not for him, it's not for him. But then don't get him to direct the movie. So of course, Emmerich just saw Godzilla as a big dinosaur, saw the success of Jurassic Park, and the experience playing Independence Day, combined the two and thought, yeah, this should be good enough. But of course, it was not. On the contrary, 2014's director, Gareth Edwards, is an avid fan of the Godzilla franchise. He grew up on it, watching the movies, buying the toys, and even made a monster movie heavily inspired by the franchise. There's also the direct and heavy involvement of Toho during the entire production of the movie, which must have also heavily contributed to the film's success and the honor it pays to the whole of the Godzilla franchise. In conclusion, Godzilla 1998 is not a Godzilla movie. While it can be enjoyed as a campy Jurassic Park ripoff, it's not a Godzilla movie. Godzilla himself was nothing close to any adaptation we've ever gotten before or since, isolating and heavily disappointing the audience. Additionally, the film's script and writing was heavily flawed, overly relying on humor with poor characters. Lastly, it wasn't born out of love or passion, but instead to make as much money as possible, with no regard given to the Godzilla franchise. Ultimately, these factors led to the financial and critical disappointment of the film. Conversely though, there's 2014, which had an amazing Godzilla, well-written script, and was born from passion and love for the Godzilla franchise, enabling not only an enjoyable film, but setting the path for Godzilla's current golden age.